I recently asked the UK government who is trying to influence food policy around synthetic and engineered meat, specifically what they call engineering biology. The response confirmed that a number of groups, including private companies, research centres, and lobbying networks, were invited to submit their views on how this technology should be supported, regulated, and introduced to the public. Now, these groups were actively recommending communication strategies, funding structures, regulatory changes, and ways to influence public opinion to make these products more acceptable. I'm going to walk you through 5 particular quotes taken directly from these documents that were released to me. These quotes are word for word, nothing added, nothing taken away. And each quote reveals a piece of strategy behind how engineered food products are being pushed, and not through open public debate, but through coordinated planning between government, industry, and PR-linked institutions. So let's start with the FOI. On the 27th of May, I submitted the following request to the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology. Quote, please provide any records from 2020 onward concerning UK government partnerships, funding or policy consultations involving companies developing lab-grown meat or plant-based protein alternatives, including Impossible Foods, Beyond Meat, or organisations supported by the Gates Foundation. And on the 19th of June, they responded with the following. We can confirm that the Department for Science, Innovation and Tech does not hold any information in response to Part 1 and Part 2 of your request. We do hold some information in scope of Part 3 of your request, including Annex A1, an extract of the results from the call for evidence on engineering biology, and Annex 2, another document showing evidence on engineering biology. It says, please know that these documents represent the views of individual stakeholders and should not be considered representative of the department's position on engineering biology policy. Some content was withheld under Section 40, i.e. personal data, and Section 43, commercial interests of the Freedom of Information Act. Now, the CVS files I received from the DSIT is incredibly awkward to navigate. It was almost like it was done on purpose. And so I had to extract the quotes word for word from the documents and then copy them over to notes so I could actually decipher them and present them to you. So forgive me for that. If you're a journalist, researcher, or media outlet watching this, and you want to use the documents that I've covered, obviously it's public information, so you're free within your right to use them. I just ask you that you credit the source. This work took a lot of time, effort, and persistence through government red tape. And as we know, trying to get information from the government is like trying to extract blood out of stone, and it can be very, very difficult and time consuming. So I've uploaded the full FOI response and both annexes to my Substack, where anyone can download and examine the original files for themselves. The link is in the description. You don't need to take my word for any of this. I encourage you to actually sleuth through it yourself. And if you plan to cover it, please cite it and credit me. That's all I ask. That's all I want. Here is a list of every organisation, every lobbyist group, research institution, synthetic food startup company, and government or public body mentioned in these 2 files. So for biotech and synthetic food startups, we have Hoxton Farms, Better Dairy, Biorenewables Development Centre, Cellular Agriculture Manufacturing Hub. For academic and research institutions, we have Imperial College London, Ask and Bryan College, and FERA Science, which is government owned but operates in a research capacity. The next batch are large corporations. The only 2 that were mentioned was Associated British Foods and Boston Consulting Group. And for lobbying, policy and advocacy groups, we have Good Food Institute, both that and Europe, Food Fermentation Europe, the British Standards Institute, and Codex Alimentarius, which I believe is a UN-linked food standards body. Next, we have government or public bodies named as references, such as the Food Standards Agency, the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, and the European Commission. And we have one think tank, that is the Climate Works Foundation. So all of these were mentioned within these documents. Let's begin with quote number 1. So here we have private actors asking for public funding to support non-competitive industry roundtables, meetings that, according to them, help different companies across the supply chain align their needs. This isn't open democratic debate. These are tightly coordinated networks like Bio Yorkshire, and with a bit of taxpayer cash, they want to engineer consensus behind closed doors and then influence government policy from a united front, essentially. So here is the quote. Various forums and networks exist for this. Geographical clusters such as Bio Yorkshire and topic-specific networks such as the NIBBs convene actors across the supply chain and varying scales of companies. These lead to clearer understanding of each other's wants and needs. The non-competitive roundtables for whole industry problem solving, such as those held by the pharma and water industries, initiate discussions between companies of varying sizes. In both cases, modest funding can help realise discussion and exchange between parties. Now this is quote number 2. This quote outlines a full blueprint for public sector support of synthetic biology from early discovery to public persuasion. The key concern with this is it starts to call to, quote, build the public's belief and uptake, framing public trust as an obstacle to be engineered rather than earned through transparent debate, essentially. Then it demands government backing at every step, such as grants, infrastructure, workspaces and staff, and then crucially, a request to, quote, reduce regulatory hurdles, implying a loosening of oversight for products still struggling for public acceptance. So it's very important that we understand what is going on. So here's the quote. All parties need to help build the public's belief and uptake of new products and processes. A good example of this is the Bio Yorkshire initiative, offering an innovation pathway from discovery and world-leading fundamental science at the University of York. Scale up and demonstration with the BDC, Regulatory, Public Safety and Environmental Impact at Fira Science with training and skills provided by Ascombe Bryan College. We ask for the government to support this through supporting innovation through grant support, including for applied research, supporting the national scale-up and pilot plant infrastructure such as BDC, supporting the maintenance of current assets, retention of knowledge and skills, and keeping pace with the current state-of-the-art assets/gaps in the market, signposting new ventures to space to develop their ideas from warehouse space, flexible support working or including access to staff and auxiliary support such as mechanical, analytical, H&S, etc., through to pilot and toll manufacturing, reducing regulatory hurdles and costs for new products and processes whilst not impacting public safety. So lots of jargon, lots of it. Now for quote 3, this one reveals a top-down strategy to align the public's goals with those of the engineering biology sector. The public isn't being asked to weigh the pros and cons. Now, it's very important to note. They're being told this new sector should become part of their national identity, their economy, and even their sovereignty. So this is very, very serious. This isn't a public dialogue from this particular quote. It's essentially an attempt to merge state objectives with industry goals, effectively embedding a speculative technology into the future vision of the UK. Notably, they even cite Better Dairy as an example, a particular synthetic food company, whose success, they argue, could help the UK escape reliance of traditional dairy altogether. In order to build public interest, the first thing the government needs to do is instill trust within the public to embrace engineering biology and see it as not a threat, but as a significant opportunity. The government should build strong links between engineering biology and the objectives of the UK populace as a whole, which will build significant public interest, as it aligns the goals of engineering biology to the goals of the people. Number 1. The ability to drive economic growth, increase GDP per capita and increase tax contributions. Number 2. Increased employment. Number 3. Achievement of net zero goals. Number 4. Achievement of other sustainability goals such as better land use or water use. Number 5. The ability to stimulate local economies, for example, redevelopment of former industrial cities to serve this new industrial revolution. Number 6. Enabling supply chain sovereignty, for example, engineering biology in Better Dairy's case, could lead to the UK not only reducing the current dairy trade deficit, but also give the UK full control of primary dairy production, especially helpful in times of food scarcity or global division factoring existing supply chains. And lastly, enabling technological sovereignty, for example, UK technological independence from other advanced nations such as US and China, thus giving the UK a seat at the table for wider international trade agreements and policy shaping. It's so fascinating to just read the language of lobbyists and what they want with the government. So here's the next quote. Why this is so concerning is because these particular organizations or this particular lobbyist group, who we don't know who they are because they've been redacted, acknowledges power imbalances and lack of trust, but rather proposing transparency or regulation or even protection, the solution offered is more networking events and trade missions. Essentially, trust is being built between insiders, but the public, you, are remained excluded from these key discussions, especially around food production and national policy. Farmers should be in the room, essentially, as well, for these discussions, and it seems like it's all done via closed doors. Big players are steering this ship, and small firms are expected to essentially adapt. I'll read you out the quote. Getting SMEs and large firms to successfully collaborate and/or exchange requirements is challenging regardless of industry. There seem to often be asymmetries in power dynamics, organisation styles and risk appetites. Barriers to each party understanding the other's requirements are usually down to reluctance to share information, which itself is due to trust. Mechanisms to bring stakeholders together and build trust include events with key decision-maker attendance from both sides, and invitations of SMEs and large firms on the same trade missions. And for the final quote, this is an elaborate public engagement strategy. So I predict that we're going to see a lot of things within the mainstream media about synthetic meat, bioengineering meat. You're going to start seeing it within the next few years. We've seen bug eating a lot of the time, and that's something that I'm looking into as well. But synthetic meat, printable meat, we've seen people like Bill Gates talk about it overseas in the US, and I think the EU Commission have talked about something very, very similar. But in the UK, it's kind of a bit wobbly. We don't really see much about that. But I do predict that we are going to see this ramped up in the next few years, say within 5 years. But this particular strategy is not just for industry insiders, but for children, schools, and the general public. So they're going to be starting to target children, I predict. But it's not all about education, it's actually about perception, and that's the key point to make here. They're curating this message of focusing on outcomes and benefits rather than simply the mechanisms themselves. Here's the quote. The BDC works with a wide range of companies from inside and outside of the engineering biology community. By taking an open, evidence-based approach, companies can see firsthand the advantages and potential issues an Eng Bio approach could bring to their business. Using technical language but not basic language and adapting explanations to the level of our audience's understanding is important in building mutual understanding, whilst introducing experts in their field to a new discipline, leading to the creation of shared knowledge of how Eng Bio could be applied to their sector. Through case studies and examples, complex concepts can be better understood by focusing on the outcomes and benefits rather than simply the mechanisms themselves. We are experienced at delivering public engagement events and dissemination of our findings. Since 2015, we have organised over 58 events attended by 2,500 participants. We have run events for a range of different groups, including the general public, school pupils, policymakers, and industry. We use a range of social media accounts to engage different audiences with our work. We also have developed a suite of outreach materials for previous projects, including a board game, a massive online open course, animations and videos, and curriculum-linked lessons for schools. So there you have it. A little brief insight into the lobbying to the government about synthetic meat being put on the market for the general public and how they are managing to push it through and how they're really pushing for the change in public perception. It's fascinating to watch. You're not going to get me on that stuff. I like my normal meat from your local farmer. I don't know what's in these synthetic meats. I'm not interested in what's in them. You want the organic, you want the grass-fed stuff that's good for you. But like I said, if you find anything else within these lobbying talks, within these documents, you can go and sleuth it yourself over at my Substack. The screenshot is on the screens now for you to make a mental note or to find in the description to remind you to go and see it. Download the documents for yourself, have a little look, and let me know what you find. You might find something that I've missed. I just decided to condense it down to just 5 important quotes for us to talk about. But once again, thank you very much for watching. I followed up with an internal review to try and figure out whether we can get these names of these stakeholders unredacted. And I want to follow up and find out if there's any more information with regarding to not just synthetic meat, but this real push for bug eating. We've seen that across recently. We had, is it Richard Madley that was on Good Morning Britain eating a load of bugs very recently to try and push for that. That's another avenue that's, very prominent. I'm looking into that as well. So hopefully I might have some more information with regarding to not just media collaborations, but with the government to try and really push this in relation to net zero and the climate cult. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you understood it. It took me a few days to try and wrap my head around it, but we've got the information and it's out there ready for the public to review themselves, to try and get their heads around it. So expect a lot of media push towards synthetic meat in the next coming years. Thank you very much, and I'll see you again very soon.